Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Candid podcast. Um, Today we have a very special episode. First off, before I get into that, hello Mohab, say hi.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome
I'm a
back, welcome
co-host.
back.
I'm a
Yeah, welcome
co-host
back,
now.
welcome back. So yeah, today we have a very special episode on our hands. Anyone who's watching this has probably seen what's going on in America and the whole uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that went down with George Floyd and everything about that. So I mean, today's episode is gonna be mostly about that because I think we have a couple things we'd like to say. But before we get into that, we have a very special guest with us today. He's a very educated person, and
Bro, don't
I
hype me up like that.
I trust his opinions a lot. So yeah, I hope you enjoy Matthew
This
being here with us.
intellectual
Yeah.
conversation, yeah.
Say hi.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello. I appreciate the hype. The very intellectual individual here.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
the words of
yeah.
mine.
Don't get too full of yourself. All right, so let's just get right into it. First off, rest in peace, George Floyd, and rest in peace to all of the African Americans who have lost their lives due to police murder. I'm not gonna say police brutality
Yeah, I was about to tell you
because
it's not brutality at
it's
this
not
point.
Nah,
brutality, it's murder.
it's murder.
So rest in peace to all of those who lost their lives. No one deserves their life to be taken away at the hands of someone who should be protecting them.
And
Yeah, go.
sorry, but like I wanted to say as well, rest in peace, Ayad. You guys heard what
Yeah,
happened in Palestine? Yeah, that was very unfortunate, and it just shows you how similar their systems are. Like,
Yeah,
and how like police feel the need to exert unnecessary force and power that just leads to people losing their lives.
it's so
So,
dumb and like it's crazy because like we're such an advanced what's it called world right now. Like we're very advanced and to think that like racism and oppression is still around is so crazy because like we've progressed so much or supposedly so, you know what I mean, but people's minds I don't think have progressed, so it's kind of like I don't know.
yeah. It's just the more intelligent we become and the more like developed we become, it simply just allows people's ignorance to just become unnoticed, and like sometimes someone can sound like so smart but certain things that are the things that really matter, like the basic human principles, they're just like are like so underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Like,
um so I yeah but I'm like I'm proud of the way that they're protesting because I know a lot of people are like they don't need to be so aggressive. They shouldn't be so violent and shit. But like as you've seen in the past, like it just doesn't like peace just does not work. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
when peace isn't an option, you know, aggression is the only option to
yeah,
to
it's
to get what you want.
yeah, it's difficult to stay calm and protest
but
peacefully,
it's
quote unquote, when such attempts in the past have just fallen on deaf ears.
Mhm.
Like what's his name, Colin Kaepernick is like an example of
Uh
that.
huh.
How he protested like very peacefully, like taking a knee during the national anthem, and
yeah.
how he's just like criticized so much for it. But at the same time, like rioting and looting, I I can see why people want to take their anger out and maybe like, oh, like light fire to a police car. Like,
Mhm.
okay, because you're directly affecting those who you feel like you're being affected by.
Mhm.
But when you have people going and looting your local grocery store, owned
Yeah,
that's
that's just
owned and operated by like your neighbor, like bro, you're just affecting the people who you're trying to defend. You're not actually uh you're not doing anything. You're just making the situation worse in that way.
But don't you feel
a lot
like
of.
maybe the sorry, Mohab, but don't you feel like maybe the chaos that they're ensuing um might be with reason? Like maybe if
Oh,
they
I don't know.
ensue enough chaos and like they just act erratically, you know what I mean? Like do you think that they're doing that for the sense of attracting attention and actually like, getting something done? Or do you think they're just doing it for the sake of, oh, everything's already fucked up, so let's just fuck it up more?
No, I think that it is because they want to have a voice. They want to feel heard, and sometimes the only way to feel heard is to just kind of like slap someone across the face, and
Mhm.
that's the sad truth. The reality is some people will not listen until they're forced to listen,
Mhm.
and it sucks to be put into that situation. But at the same time, uh, I think that violent protests should be avoided at all costs. And I feel like the fact that it has come to this is more of the fault of the American government, and shows that like how bad the system is, and how this has been allowed to go on and had to reach to this point. You
Uh,
know?
I don't know, but I don't really I don't know. I think I disagree with the fact that violent protests like shouldn't like I don't know because one of the biggest protests we experienced here in Egypt was the 2011 protest, and
Mm,
as soon because nothing was happening, right? But as soon as things started
yeah.
getting violent, that's when the change started to happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're peacefully protesting, you're not gonna draw attention, and like no one's really gonna like none of the politicians are really gonna care because you're not really doing anything, right? Yeah, enjoy your freedom of speech,
Mm.
but like I'm not gonna do anything about it. Sure, like get angry, yeah, but if
Yeah,
you're not
like
gonna do anything, I don't care. You know what I mean? So I feel like um,
yeah.
violent
Vi-
protests have a
they
like very probable let me word this better. They have a very high probability to work because
yeah, they're
when
more likely to
when
work because they
yeah
feel more
yeah yeah
pressure.
because when like madness ensues, you have to take action right then and there, or else it's just gonna keep getting worse. You know what I mean? But a peaceful
Mm.
protest, if they ignore them, like what's really gonna happen? And then in the end, it's gonna turn into a violent protest and an aggressive protest anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So they
yeah,
like
but
I don't feel like politicians are really gonna take action unless it becomes a violent protest, because then they have to take action.
I hear what you're saying, and what you're saying does have some truth to it. But at the same time, I like if you look at what's happening now, you see that when protests are becoming violent, like as they are now, it's kind of in a way delegitimizing the movement that they're making, because they're just kind of seen as like, oh look, they're just burning shit down.
Hmm.
They're not trying to make a statement, they're just destroying shit. And that in a way kind of like it dilutes the purpose of their movement. It dilutes the legitimacy of it, because they're less viewed as individuals who want change, as individuals who like should be respected. They're seen as kind of in a way savages. Not saying that they are, but that's how they're perceived. And when things are escalating the way that they do, and when violent protests aren't heard, then you'll see like what's happening now. Whereas police and fucking and protesters, they're just clashing, and people are getting shot by rubber bullets. People are getting tear gassed. People
Hmm.
are dying. You're protesting, and you can see like and but peaceful protests, while in many cases aren't as effective, they definitely can be effective at a large enough scale. Like for example, not even that long ago in Lebanon, there were peaceful protests, and there was and the full like believe the prime minister and the full cabinet resigned as a result of the
Yeah, I remember
protests.
that.
Now, the protests continued after that because the people they were replaced with were also bullshit, and I think they should be replaced.
Hmm.
Uh, but again, like they can be successful, but definitely more violent protests, it's easier to be heard, but the change that will come of violent means won't be like as productive.
Hmm. I get what you mean.
Or at least I feel it. That's my 2 cents.
I get what you mean. Mohab, what do you have to say about this?
Honestly, I believe from what I've heard, what I've seen, and what I've like read on Twitter and news, that it was peaceful throughout until what's it called? The police uh
Fighting back.
started making it, yeah, fighting back, making it unnecessarily violent.
Hmm.
That's what I read. And in a sense, peaceful protests don't work if your president doesn't give a shit, honestly.
True.
Because like
Mm.
you've seen Trump like last night or 2 days ago, I don't remember. He held this press conference at the White House, and the way he talked and the decisions he made, it just showed that he doesn't care about the cause of their movement or what they're fighting for. He
I
just
just
wants
yeah.
to end the ruckus.
I just saw a clip of like a couple hours ago of Trump. He was making a speech, and he was speaking like directly to African Americans, and he was telling them, "What do you have to lose?" And he was talking about how bad they are, and it's just it's crazy because like if your president is that like racist and open about it, like what do you think the police force is gonna be like? You know what I mean? Like I don't know
Yeah,
if you saw the
exactly.
the clip of the police officer speaking to the white woman, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, we only shoot black people. Like we only kill black people." I
God
was
damn, I didn't
so
see that.
shocked when I saw that. My jaw dropped because I was like, "You're so blatantly racist. It's crazy how there's no change." You know what I mean? And I'm just
Yeah,
like I don't know.
I'll tell you
I
why there's
disagree.
no change. Because it's embedded within the system.
Mm.
Like all of this and like the racial profiling and the problem of race in America is
It's
is
not new.
is yeah, it's not that it's not new. It's within the system of like what 60 years ago people black people in America were what all blue collar workers, not respected.
Mm-hmm.
They can't sit in the same place as white people. They were treated so bad, like, and way before that they were literal slaves.
Mhm.
Yep.
So if you kind of see the like moving from being free people in Africa, then being shipped into America, treated like absolute shit. They literally treated like white people treated their property way better than they treated black people, even though black people back then were considered property.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's embedded within their system. Like it's not on accident. Like you guys were talking about. Oh, the human race has been through so much evolution. This and that. We've gone through so much. We've evolved so much to the point where this shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, well, it's on purpose.
Mhm.
It's on purpose. And the problem of race within white people traces back to them owning them, literally.
Yeah.
That's where the gap that's where the gap was made. That's why white people feel privileged. That's why white people are privileged. Because back then, when they abolished, and I'm doing air quotes, when they abolished slavery, they gave it another name,
Yeah,
or they
exactly.
they 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 gave it a different format.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's I
Yeah. They
I
were
I
they were still
understand.
treated as second-rate
Yeah,
citizens for a long,
yeah,
long time, and even in many
still
parts of
are.
America, still today. Yeah.
But I understand the need of violence, but I don't understand like people destroying and harming small businesses. Like how
Exactly.
what are you getting from that? Like you're not even affecting the government or the country in any way, shape, or form if you
Small businesses, yeah.
It's
Like
small business.
And the thing is
I
that
envy the owners.
there's a lot of those small business owners who are actually black as well. So that's when that's when I like my eyes kind of opened up towards the like, oh shit, like maybe them like, creating this much of a fuss and destroying shit like this, it may actually not be all good, cuz like, they may be still harming their own people even
no,
if they don't know.
the issue I feel with these protests, the biggest thing, is that they're not unified in any way. It's basically people going out into the streets in dozens of different states, in dozens of different cities, and they're going out and just protesting, like saying Black Lives Matter. And some of them are super peaceful, they're super respectful, they're super organized, and they're really productive. Whereas others are like, no, we need to be violent because they don't hear us any other way.
Mhm.
And they're going out and they're destroying shit and looting shit. And one thing that I think, if you have a goal, then violent protests can be effective. But realistically, like, if you don't have a set goal, if there's not a set leader to protesters, like, there will always be people who will continue protesting, because there's going to be people who are going to have a more conservative opinion. Like, they want simply, like, basic, like, they want police officers to be more qualified and have more education as to not to discriminate against people. But then there'll be people who says, I want Trump and his whole administration to resign, and I want every police officer to go through extensive like several year long training. I want all police officers to be like to be like go through severe evaluation, and I want every captain to be fired, and I want completely new, complete change across the state, across the system, and they will continue to protest until that is achieved. And
But that's
there's a
fair.
big,
That's fair too, though.
yeah, that is fair. But the thing is, though, there's a big, because there's no set objective, there's no set expectation as to what there's no, because in reality, people are gonna continue to protest until a, their expectations are met, or b, they get tired. And
Mhm.
the thing is, though, is that if these protests are getting violent and they don't get tired, there's always going to be those who will want more, those with the more radical views in this topic. They're
Mhm.
going to keep protesting and continue to be violent until they feel like their
I've got what I
expectations,
wanted.
which in some cases, these expectations can never be met.
Mhm.
Like, they're very opportunist, which is their right. Like, there's always those who are perceived as radical, but their opinions are very valid, and in many cases the the most right thing to do. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's just very difficult to meet those expectations, and that's the thing when you have like these de-unified protests. It's it's awkward
Mhm.
because there's no specific, because in this case, like, what do you really do as a response to these protests effective? Like, what do you say, like, realistically? Say, like, do you say, yeah, do you want, okay, if Trump comes out and says, yes, Black Lives Matter, I'm sorry, but even if it was a different president, not necessarily Trump, if it's a different president, let's say it's Obama, like, what is he going to say? Yes, I agree with Black Lives Matter, we're going to have a reform in the police force, but people will still fucking protest. That's not going to end the protest.
Mhm.
People will still say, no, that's bullshit, we want actual action. But what
Mhm.
action are they actually asking for?
I
And that's
get
the
you.
question, because when you have no set goal and you're just people protesting because they're mad, it it's kind of uncharted territory, because it allows for serious damage to be made,
Mhm.
and that's the scary thing.
I get what you mean, completely. Like, yeah, I get that because, like, protesting without a certain goal is just kind of useless.
Not useless, but dangerous,
Yeah, yeah.
because there will still be there, most likely something will come of this. But because there's no set expectation, there's no ultimatum made, we want this, or we protest, or we continue the protests. It may just escalate until one side breaks the other, and that's the scary thing.
Mhm. Okay. I just wanted to talk a bit about George Floyd. I saw a tweet by at Baby Min Cook. I think this is a K-pop stan. Anyway, so this tweet talks about George Floyd. So I'm just gonna read some of it. Um, it starts. Did you know he was called the gentle giant because he was 6'6" and his immense kindness? His sister said, quote, "To know George was to know love," end quote. And I firmly believe that. Did you know he was from Houston and that he has a cousin that plays or played for the Spurs? Did you know that he was a truck driver when he moved to Minneapolis? He moved there to make a better life. This particularly put knots in my stomach. Did you know he was a security guard and that he touched everyone's life that came into contact with at Conga? Did you know he was someone's baby, brother, nephew, and friend? Did you know he didn't resist? Did you know that he was yanked out of his car? I bet you didn't. I bet not many people do. Times are scary, tensions are high, people are cruel, our sense of duty to our fellow humans is dwindling. We've become so desensitized that instead of helping someone who is in need, we film it and put it online. See, I don't care if he was resisting or had used counterfeit money, which is quite obvious he did neither. That man deserves to be alive. The job
Yeah.
of our law enforcement is to protect and serve. The Minneapolis officers did neither. They ignored a man who was in distress, and now a mother has to bury her boy. I'm gonna stop there. There's more to it, but reading reading this, it just broke my heart. Cause like you don't really, I don't know, when it's not someone you like know personally, you kind of don't overthink like who they were before they died. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's just me, but like I didn't think of it that way. You know that he like his like just think about how heartbroken his mother is. Like look at how heartbroken the nation is. Look, can you imagine how heartbroken his mother is, and his family, and to think that this doesn't just happen. You know, this doesn't just
Yeah.
happen. This hasn't just happened to one person. Like it's not only George Floyd who has died at the hands of like fucking murderers. You know what I mean? So like it's just like it's so sad and it's so heartbreaking, and that's why I feel like the action that they're taking is very necessary and that I support it 100%.
Yeah.
I believe what's supposed to be done right now is all these officers to be properly, what's it called, prosecuted, because all these officers just got away with
Yeah, the
murder,
officer that killed
literally,
him,
Yeah.
he
and
got third degree murder.
yeah, it just
That's
shows you.
disgraceful. Third
It's
degree,
murder.
my ass. My ass, that
No,
was a third
it's
degree
straight up
murder.
murder. Like he
That's
knew
first
that he was
degree, bro. That's
physically.
first degree. That's meant.
Yeah.
He
Like.
meant to kill him. The guy was on the ground, cuffed, saying, "I can't breathe. I'm going to die." And he's telling him, "Relax. You can't that how can you prosecute that as third degree murder when the guy's begging for his life on the ground with
Yeah.
four people on him? He's not gonna get away, okay? No matter how strong someone is, you're not
Mm,
overcoming four police officers who are trained in martial arts, right? And have
yeah.
equipment. You're not gonna be able to outpower that. And the guy held his knee on his neck for 8 minutes.
Yeah. It's so stupid.
Like, how is that third degree murder? It just
Like
pisses me
bro.
off so much.
There's an argument when someone gets accidentally shot and the police officer says, "I thought he was armed." Like that's murder as well. But there's an argument to be made. I thought he was had a gun, but that's just straight up murder. The situation was fully contained. The situation was completely under control. Okay, you can't tell me that this dude felt physically intimidated by this dude when his knee is on his neck and he's about to, like, if you feel like this dude was subject to get away, you put him in the
In the
squad car,
car, yeah.
in the car. You don't. That's straight up murder, and it's disgusting how someone can do that, and how he's not prop. And also, like, uh, the officers that were with him should have also been charged.
Hmm.
Like, it's so stupid how they got away.
Yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
they're complicit in his crime.
Yeah, no, that's so that also really pisses me off. Police officers who can watch someone do that and not do anything about it. Like it's just, it pisses me off so much. I saw a video on Twitter of a black police officer saying that he doesn't let anything like that slide.
Yeah, I saw the video. That's crazy.
And I
Like,
was like this is what they need. You know what I mean? They need police officers who hand out like justice, even if it's their colleague that's committing a crime. They need to be able
exactly.
to take action and stop them from committing that crime, because it's not just citizens who commit crimes, as you've seen like over the years in the US. Officers do it too. People with power, they do it,
Yeah,
and
and that's the
they
thing.
need to be punished accordingly, and not
It's
just
not.
like let go like that just because they're in a position of power. It's so stupid.
It's that the fact is that they have significant responsibility and significant power, but they aren't held to a higher standard necessarily. Like, for example, sometimes when you see your friend doing something dumb or something wrong, some people will point it out, but some people won't, and it's more so like it's not really my business. And when it's like your friend vaping in class or something dumb like that, it doesn't really matter because what you're doing isn't really affecting anyone.
Mhm.
But and same certain things in the workplace, because what you're doing doesn't really affect someone else's life. But when you're having a job, like something that requires high responsibility, like
Mhm.
if you're a surgeon or you're a police officer
Mhm.
or a politician, you can't just go, yeah, okay, I know he's doing wrong, but it's fine.
Mhm.
You don't have that luxury. You should be held to a higher standard because you're playing with people's lives. And that's the issue. I feel like many police officers aren't held to that, don't hold each other to that higher standard.
Yeah, they're not held accountable for their actions, really.
And that's the type of like workplace discipline and workplace philosophy that should be put in place.
Mhm.
They should hold each other to the highest standard. Because what's often seen is that if it's not one police officer who's bad, it's not like one or two. Often, more often than not, if there's a couple bad police officers in a precinct, the entire precinct will be bad.
Mhm.
Like there are cases where like, oh, like in a police precinct, like one or two will take bribes, and then they'll just help the rest of their colleagues get bribes until to the point where everyone knows, oh, that precinct, if you want to get away with shit, you just bribe one of the dudes in that precinct, like one of those like 50 police officers.
Mhm.
And because but at the same time, if there's a few really good police officers in another precinct and they're like leaders, they help motivate their colleagues, that precinct will only be the best performing in the county or in the state, or I don't know what metric
Mhm.
they used to measure it. And because the people will follow the the workplace habits and the workplace philosophies of the people who are like natural leaders,
I
and they
get
will
you.
follow those. And the issue with the American police system is that it's not just one or two police officers, it's those one or two police officers who instill the habits among their colleagues.
Mhm.
So if you have like one race, like sometimes if you're with racist friends, you think that it may be okay to be racist yourself
Mhm.
because all the rest of your friend group is acts that way. And that's this case with a lot of these police officers in these precincts. If one of them discriminates against black people, then you may think it's okay for you yourself to do it.
Yeah, I get for sure.
And that's the type of stuff you need to avoid.
Do you guys know in protests, what's it called when the police officers are arresting any of the people there? They put their knees on their necks the same way that officer did on George Floyd
Yeah,
for like
I
psychological
saw that.
effect.
I saw that.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And
I
do you
don't
guys know
know.
that what's it called in because I've seen it a lot on Twitter as well. Like police officers embrace the protesters, hug them, let the media take pictures, take videos, post them the
Yeah, and then
second
tear
that
gas
they're
them right
done.
after.
Yeah, it's a corrupt system. It's like as a whole, it's a corrupt system,
Yeah.
and
Nah,
at this
really?
point, I just believe it's not that there's a few bad apples. It's there's a few good apples.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. No, what I question when I see that is that like when you see police officers like wrecking cars and you see police officers like destroying shit. Like have you seen those on Twitter? Like
Yeah,
those
yeah, yeah,
videos?
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you see like these police officers like blatant police brutality, like pushing people with cars, pushing them over, or like even members of the press who are like clearly like have like press uniforms and with cameras, they're like shoving them and shit, and like
Mhm.
gets to the point where like if all of these police officers are acting so brutal, it you have to question why. Because if you're a person, you're a police officer, and you see all the and you're being scrutinized this much, you're not gonna go and act just as they say you're acting. You're gonna be ashamed of yourself, like realistically,
Mm.
or like or that's at least that's how I would act, and I assume that's how you would act, right?
Mhm.
So what? So the question is, why are they acting like that? And the only logical reasoning that comes to my mind, other than just a few of them are racist, or a few of the, there's a lot of bad apples, like Mohab said. Uh, I think that probably it's the higher ups who are the bad apples, quote unquote. They're being told to do this because, in my mind, no way would there be this many cases of police officers being so blatantly like brutal
Mm.
without being told to be so. To like no way would police officers blatantly be seeing themselves like of this case of police officers being just nothing but just being shit on the news and in the public view, and they're gonna go out and do the exact same shit.
Mhm.
Like there will be some who will do that, but no way would be at this scale, or at least I would think so. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe there are just the system is just that fucked up, and there are that many bad police officers.
Yeah.
But in my eyes, there has to be like the police captain saying, just like, control these protests by any means necessary.
Mhm.
Like that's the only logical way I can think that there'd be this many accounts of just like completely disgusting police brutality against protesters.
Yeah. I get what you
You
mean.
know, like
Um,
it's just crazy to think about.
just the last thing that I want to touch on that's related to this topic. Um, I saw a tweet on my timeline by at very creative tag,
Mm.
saying he was speaking about um, locals in the Middle
Oh yeah,
East,
I know what you mean.
and I'll read this out. He said, I have never seen locals riled up about an issue this much, even for a Palestinian issue, which we should prioritize a hundredfold than an American racism issue. And if you're really so desperate about playing wannabe activists, talk about racism in the Middle East. There isn't lack of it. And the audacity
Yeah,
of people to shame people who haven't publicly supported the movement in America just goes to show how out of touch they are. To dare to think that people in the Middle East must invest their time on American politics is absurd. And um, I agree.
yeah. No, I think, and here's a statement, and this might piss people off, but I don't care. Okay,
Okay, I'll quote you.
by a lot of people supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, because at the end of the day, you can say whatever the hell you want. When you the Black Lives Matter movement is about black people being equal to and being viewed in the same way as everyone else. And when you have any subject about equality, you should be for equality across the board.
Mhm.
But many people, by supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, are being hypocritical to the concept of equality. Because if you look at the past 2 years, there have been protests in Lebanon. There have been protests in Iraq. I believe there were protests in Egypt, but I don't think they were that big, right? Over the
Yeah,
past two
they
years.
weren't anything
Yeah.
major.
Yeah, but people remain completely silent on on those topics. There are people who are being displaced from their homes and killed in Palestine.
Mhm.
There are men,
Exactly.
women, and children being bombed in Syria and
Yes.
killed in a conflict that they have no control over. And yet people go and they go on Twitter and they go on Instagram and they share all this shit about the Black Lives Matter movement, and yet they haven't said anything before about any other issues. I
Yeah.
mean, like Sudan, there were massive protests, and that got massive uh, coverage
Attention, support.
internationally, and that got massive support. But there are people who were completely like oblivious to that, and now they're on Twitter and Instagram posting black pictures on their timeline, thinking that they're activists.
Hmm.
But what you don't understand, by doing that, you're going against the concept of equality, because you should be focusing on the issues that affect you, that affect the people around you,
Yeah.
that affect the cultures that are important to you, that surround you.
And
And by supporting some American issue, I'm not saying it's only an American issue. Like the Black Lives Matter is very important. Not, I
hmm
don't want to take away from it. It's a very important issue, not just in America but around the world. But by supporting these protests that are specifically in America and tweeting about it, but then remaining silent about everything else, you're simply saying that because we aren't American or because we aren't Western, our issues are less important.
but I think um a main thing that stems from is the fact that not only
It's
are people nowadays sheep, but
yeah, it's
the
trendy.
the people who lead the herd are major social media influencers and
Yeah,
stuff who are American. So and it's very apparent that the East is heavily whitewashed by the
yeah,
West. So when you see people like that and are calling um other people out. Why aren't you speaking publicly about this? Blah blah blah. You should be, and are heavily like pushing the Black Lives Matter. Good for you, but you have no right
but
to scold anyone else
yeah,
unless that person is American, because um we have our own issues. You don't see any American stuff. I mean, I won't say any, but you won't see fucking 90% of North Americans talking about the issue, or 90% of the world talking about the issue, because 90% of the world is talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and the riots that are going on in the U.S. right now. But you don't
mm,
see that kind of coverage on the things on the things going on in Palestine and Syria and Iraq and all of that. Why? Because there are no major social media influencers who have brainwashed the teenagers into following what their beliefs are. And I feel like that's what I've seen heavily on Twitter, is that I'll see like Middle Easterners. I don't know, is that a word? Anyway, people from the Middle East who are from Palestine, who are from Iraq, who are from Syria, okay, who are from Lebanon, that didn't mention a single word about the things going on in their country, but as soon as this shit started going down in the U.S., they got so riled up. And how aren't you supporting the Black Lives Matter movement? How aren't you
yeah,
sharing your public opinion on this? This is unbelievable. Let me change my profile picture into a black screen to show my support of the Black Lives Matter movement, because that's how important it is to me. What about your country? You know what I mean? Like, you got to start with yourself first before you start focusing on literally the other side of the world, because they don't care about the East. They don't give a shit. And specifically the US, they're a very big, very big part of why countries like Syria and Iraq are destroyed. You know what I
exactly.
mean? And Palestine even. And they're in support, high support of Israel. And you see what Israel is doing to Palestine. So I was so shocked to see so many Palestinians in such big support of the Black Lives Matter movement who have never mentioned a thing about their own country. Like, I'm all for it, right? Black lives do
Yeah,
matter, and the movement is very important, okay? Not just because it's in America, but because there are black people everywhere in the world and their lives do matter. You can't discriminate against someone just because they have a different skin color. That's a soul, that's a person, right? They deserve to have everything you have, or the right to own, right? The same things you're allowed to own.
they have the right to the same
They have
opportunities.
the right to be a fucking person. They shouldn't be treated like anything less than that.
they need to be every single soul on this planet, no matter what, deserve to be respected.
So when I'm
Like
like
as lo-
when I'm seeing that, and like you're giving like 100 times the attention to the U.S. issues than you are giving to your own country's issues or your own people's issues, it's just so crazy to me. Like if you haven't supported your own country and your own people, don't come and talk to anyone else about why aren't you sharing your views on an
yeah,
issue that is related to the U.S. right now, the riots.
yeah, it's disgusting in my opinion when people not well, not like yeah, you don't have the right to criticize other people because they're not doing what's trendy. Because in reality, a lot of
Yeah,
people who
exactly.
are because a lot of people who are say and who are promoting Black Lives Matter, tweeting about it, posting about it,
They got
yes,
criticized.
they I don't think you should criticize them because
No,
activism
no,
is
no.
still
It's
important.
yeah, like I'm
But
not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that that a lot of people, like as Adam said, like started posting about the movement because a lot of people criticized people who aren't speaking up, which is yeah, like
yeah,
speaking up, like not speaking up is or staying quiet is as an equivalent to saying, "Oh, I'm okay with that," but you have no right to criticize someone who isn't. I don't know who isn't affected. I don't know. I don't want to say
No,
something to
yeah,
I
offend
think
someone.
I
yeah.
think
I'm like,
I think what you
No,
want to
I
say is you have no right to criticize someone um who
if
didn't speak about a major topic at the moment when you haven't spoken about a major topic who that has been going on for years.
yeah.
thank you.
And
Yes, exactly.
I can understand if you're criticizing another American for not supporting the movement because there's someone who's in direct proximity of those
Yeah.
affected. Their lives are affected by this, and if they're staying there as bystanders.
Hmm.
But let's say, like to be honest, in discrimination against black people
Sorry,
here,
can you say that again? Sorry.
in Qatar, there's a lot of discrimination against people like black people.
People of any other race.
People of yeah of any of
Yeah,
literally anyone who isn't Middle Eastern, but even many people who are Middle Eastern are
Hmm.
discriminated. If you're anyone, you're gonna get discriminated in one way or another.
Hmm.
But
No one
I
speaks
feel
about
like,
that.
but no one speaks about it. But at the same time, many like for example, like Sudanese people in this country, there's many like Sudanese doctors and
Hmm.
Sudanese like and
Egyptians, bro. Like
Egyptians as well.
Egyptians are such a big part of the economic system of
Egyptians need to be respected more in this country,
literally
especially in the last
in
two
so
two three
many
years.
countries, in Middle Eastern countries as well, not just
Mhm.
Qatar, but in Kuwait
Exactly.
and in Saudi and
Kuwait. Yeah, do you guys see the video?
yeah. I don't
The
want to get
Kuwaiti
into
woman.
that, but um
Yeah,
Egyptians are a very big part not only of the economic system, but they play such an essential role in
Yeah.
labor. Like Egyptians, a majority of Egyptians are doctors, engineers, people who need to be present for a society to function. You know what I mean? And the fact that we're discriminated against because we're Egyptians is so ridiculous because we have so much impact on the entire world. So the fact that you're like literally discriminating against people who help your country is just beyond me.
Yeah.
It's beyond me. Like it's the discrimination is not just towards black people in America. It's towards black people in the Middle East, and don't even get me started about Asia. Like they're very racist towards black people. Um, so the racism is not just in America. The racism is everywhere, and that needs to change. And like racism is present in the Middle East. I lived in the Middle East for 8 years. I experienced so much racism, and I'm sure that you have experienced racism as well, discrimination, right? Just because you're from somewhere else.
yes.
So if we're not speaking about something that has that is also been there for such a long time, why are we focusing only on the racism that's going on in America? Why don't we
Yeah.
focus on the racism going on in other places as well? Why don't we make this a collective effort of all countries to come together and end this discrimination? Why are we only focusing on America just because it's like the biggest influencer, uh, between quotes, in the world? Is that the reason why so many people are hopping on, hop and I'm and quote me on this, people are hopping on the train of the Black Lives Matter movement without understanding what it stands for, why it's a thing, and who the people they are supporting are. People are just hopping onto it because it's trending right now, and I'm telling you that. So just because you don't go and you spam your feed, okay, with Black Lives Matter posts, it does not mean you're not in support. You can support them in silence. You don't like by whatever people are taking away from donations towards the BLM movement. I just said the anyway. They're taking away from that, and I'm so confused. Like money matters. Like you can't say that a donation doesn't matter. And I don't know. I just feel like that topic is like it's so um what's the word? I don't know. A bit
Controversial. I don't know.
not just controversial. It's just it's weird because you can't focus on one thing and ignore everything else because
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
people in America, like the black people in America, they're having like really big arguments with the white people because the white people are trying to say that they get discriminated against, which obviously they don't. They have privilege. It's been known, but um, I don't feel like anyone who knows anything about the Middle East and the racism that goes on in the Middle East, or in Asia or any other continent, even in Europe, they can't take away from that racism and say, "Oh no, the Black Lives Matter movement is more important than this
Yeah.
topic right here." You can't take away from the importance of a different topic just because it's happening to you.
Mm.
That was hefty.
But
Yeah.
but one thing you said is that how like white people make an argument in the U.S. about how they're being discriminated against, but that's not true. And yes, they aren't discriminated against in the U.S. for like 99% of the time. But at the same time, I disagree with those who say that there's no such thing as reverse racism because I do think that there is. And and I think that any person, no matter what race, if they're part of a minority, they're very likely to be discriminated against.
Mhm.
And one such example I'd like to bring up was, for example, like Isaac in the school.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna lie to you, he was like a lot people fucking harassed him and bullied him pretty much because he was white.
Yeah.
Like, and but he's white. There's no such thing as reverse racism. No, there is. It's just that he's a minority. Because in reality, in our school specifically, we don't have that many white kids. I think he was like the only one at the time. Well, at least in the year, he was the only one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I get exactly what you mean. But that's because he was
and
a minority there.
yeah, exactly.
But I'm talking
And
about the
and
U.S. specifically. White,
yeah,
you know.
and the U.S. specifically, yeah, there are people. Yeah, for the most part, white people aren't discriminated against. But at the
Mm.
same time, there are still people in, for example, like white people growing up in black majority neighborhoods who are going to be viewed differently because of their skin color. And if they go to in certain places, they'll be viewed as a normal white person. But if they're growing up in that community, this kid is going to be white playing with a ton of black kids, and the black kids are gonna view him differently because they don't know any better and they think he's different.
Mhm.
And and especially like white people are discriminated a lot in Hispanic majority communities. Like they're called gringo,
Mhm.
which is essentially like the N word for white people, but carries less weight
Mhm.
because it has less history, very little
Don't
history, but
you?
it's used in that context. And for the most part, those are very specific, very limited cases. But at the same time, and I do think, yes, I don't think people should be advocating for white lives matter or some bullshit. No, I'm not saying that 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 white people should also be protesting and shit. It's barely an issue, but at the same time, that's just me, in my opinion. When people say reverse racism doesn't exist, it does exist. It's just it's very situation.
I got you.
Don't you think that was caused by like, or the difference in the way people treat each other, uh, based on their like what's it called, their skin color? It was originated by what's it called, the white people in America. Like that gap, that hate, um that way of treating each other. Don't you think that originated from them back then? And not just back then, like it originated from how white people viewed themselves as higher than Mexicans or than black people. That's why when they see uh, um, a white person in their community, of course they're gonna view him differently. Of course
Yeah,
they're gonna treat him differently. But don't you think that was caused by the fact that
yeah,
I,
that's
I don't
definitely a
believe
huge
every
factor. That's
as
definitely a
I
huge factor. But
yeah,
like let me take this example, okay? Let's say there's like kids in the neighborhood, okay? And regardless of what, if it's a like white majority or black majority or Hispanic majority, if there's a kid who looks different from the rest, they may not treat him different. They may not just directly discriminate against him. They still may view him. They still most likely will view him as an equal. I'm talking like kids like 8 years old, kids who don't know anything better. Okay, and let's say assume they have like no awareness of racism, or the difference between races. If this like perfect world, if there's like oh there are like seven black kids and one white kid, they may not discriminate against him due to like preconceived notions, but they still may view him slightly differently because he is of a different skin color.
Hmm.
you
Because
know,
in reality, they're different, and it's impossible to ignore that fact.
yeah.
However, through being properly informed, you can overcome it and realize we're just the same. The only thing that's different is the skin.
Yeah.
Because but yes, like when people like the difference with like people like disrespecting someone because of their skin only, or like blatant racism, that's something that is taught.
Yeah.
People aren't naturally racist like that. It's
Yeah,
all
it's how
preconceived
you're raised.
notions.
Yeah, it's how you're
It is.
raised,
It
honestly.
is.
Yeah.
It's how you're raised, not only by your parents, because some people have
Your
amazing
community, your
parents, but your
school, your
community and
yeah,
the people you surround yourselves with, the
yeah,
people you go to
exactly.
school
I
with,
was
the
just
people
about to
you
say that.
work with, the friends you surround yourself with. Those, I think, when it comes to racism, it's mostly your parents and the people you surround yourself with,
Hmm.
True.
the biggest factors.
So yeah, to just end that off, like racism is a real thing. Stay aware. Wake the fuck up. Stop being racist. If you're a racist, you're a piece of shit. Stop watching this podcast right now and click the fuck off. Um, yeah, that's just all I wanted to say.
Before we end off, I just wanted to talk about something because last night on Twitter, everyone was sharing their, how can I say it? It's not that it's not a story, but like they're sharing when
The age.
they were the age they were either sexually assaulted or abused. And I just want to say that you guys are like really, really brave, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. You're encouraging other people to share their stories, and I was so shocked of how common it is,
Yeah,
and it just boils my blood because uh, uh, I
it
have
just
two younger
disgusts.
sisters, and you both of you have sisters. It doesn't even matter, like the age doesn't matter, but like the fact that something like that might happen to one of my sisters because of this messed up community we live in, because it's literally like like people that I know personally. turned out to be sexually assaulted. I don't know if it's from a stranger, a random person, a member in a family, but it's still within our community, you know?
Yeah,
And and it's just something
it's just something
so shocking.
that it's just something that invokes like just pure disgust when you hear about it. Like how shitty of a person you must be to do something like that. Because like as a guy, like you're going to be tempted, but if you're raised properly,
Exactly.
you're gonna like put down those temptations like the second they come up. And
Mm.
like no, but you get what I mean. Like,
I
but
mean,
yeah, you
I
you
I
know how to act. The way you think is not the same way you act, basically.
um I don't
And
know.
it's just yeah, it's
I
a
what I
reflection on
just
the way they raise. They raise you.
I think the people who stepped up and spoke up about something like
Yeah,
that, that's very personal, and the girls and the guys who did it, very inspiring, and you're all very very brave, and I have very a very large amount of respect for all of you. But I
Determined.
also don't want to take
so
away from the
incredibly
people
brave.
who haven't mustered up the
Yeah, yeah.
courage to speak up. Just
It's
know,
completely
It's
just
very sensitive
yeah,
for a lot of
just
people.
know that it's okay to take your time to speak up. It's okay if you never want to speak up. It's fine. That's your business and nobody else's. Don't ever feel pressured to speak out on something like that. It's something personal, and just know that it's never ever ever your fault for anything like that to
Oh yeah.
happen. I know that like I know some victims of sexual assault and sexual abuse, and the first one of the first thoughts they experience is it my fault? It's not your fault. It's never your fault. Okay, it's not your fault for it's never your fault for other people's actions, and just know that just because something like that happened to you, it doesn't demean you as a person. You're still like you're worth a lot more than you may think you are, and you're still a person worth respect, love, and I wish everything good comes your way. Just know that it's never your fault, and just know that you never have to speak up. You can take as much time as you want to come to terms, or you may never come to terms with something like that. Just know that it's okay and it's not your fault, and that you're strong for being able to go through something like that and still wake up every day and still be able to put a smile on your face and say good morning to your people. You know what I mean? You're strong for that. I don't want anyone to take away from your worth just because you didn't speak up about it. You're still strong. You're still amazing. You're still brave. You deserve respect, and I respect you. So I just wanted to say, just because you haven't spoken up about it, does not demean its worth. You're still an amazing human being, and as well as the people who shared their stories and shared, and like the people who shared all of their stories on Twitter and everything like that. I respect you and I admire you a lot, and you inspire me to make sure that I keep growing into a better and better version of myself every day, and strive to become the best person I can be. And you've shown me how it's so important, and I'm talking to a wide majority of people here. It's so important to raise your kids correctly, and separate the right from the wrong, and I don't want parents to ever feel ashamed of getting vulgar with their kids. Sometimes you have to get vulgar with your kids to let them know how bad the situation can be. You know what I mean? Like you need to make them understand that it doesn't just affect the person who experiences the sexual abuse. Like it doesn't just affect them, physically or whatever. Like it's such a mental toll. Like people, the act of sexual assault. I'm gonna use the word here, rape. They soldiers used to be raped as a way to mentally torment them in war, and so many soldiers back in the World War, they killed themselves. They took their own lives because of the torment of being raped. So if don't ever feel like give me a sec.
Sure.
Yeah. God damn, it was a speech and a half. But yeah, yeah. One thing I'd like to say about that is that a lot of people who are victims of sexual abuse, sexual assault, they end up thinking that it's their fault, that it's somehow something that they did that brought it upon themselves.
It's
But
never their fault.
yeah, it's not your fault. One thing you need to know is that many people in this world, especially guys, are fucking disgusting, and they do disgusting things, and it's not your fault for them being disgusting people. So don't blame yourself for being a victim, because sometimes it's just not, but not that it's not in your control, but it's not something that you did.
And
And
just one more thing that um, just know that it's not how you dress, it's not how you act, it's not what you say.
Yeah, I was just about to
Okay,
say it's
none of
literally
that,
the
none of
yeah.
that has any relation to anything that happens to you. People in the Middle East who wear abaya and niqab, okay, they're still
Yes, look
sexually
at that.
harassed and sexually abused, okay, and they cover their entire body from head to toe, and just know that the temptation will never come from whatever you wear, do, say, act, nothing like that. It's planted in the piece of shit's head, okay? And it's never your fault for what happens to you when it comes to when it comes to someone else doing some shit like that. It's never your fault. Ever. Ever.
I think at this point I don't need to say anything because like Adam, like you
he summed it up
basically
pretty well.
yeah you summed it up really well and um I just wanted to say like again for the people who didn't find the courage to talk about such thing, it's completely fine. It's they're not obligated to talk about this because it's such a personal experience and it's such a like traumatizing experience. Like I wouldn't understand, but um it's like the effects of such act, like people inflict self-harm through cutting themselves, doing a lot of sexual assault or abuse victims uh, tend to use drugs just to
Numb the pain.
numb the pain.
Mm.
So the fact that you were able to overcome such again trauma and torment without doing all of those things that might just that might that might eventually lead to you losing your life or taking a huge wrong turn in your journey as a person. Like I salute you, and it's not what happened to you, it's what you choose to become. like like people need to understand that, like because a lot of victims are held back by what happened, and it's very hard for them to move forward. But for those who did, and for those who are trying their best, I salute you. You have my utmost respect, and uh, for my people and for everyone, I love you. I have your back. Literally, what's it called? This okay. Story time to the end to end the podcast.
Mhm.
This like to show how this shit boils my blood. um this girl I met on a group chat. Like we started talking on a group chat, and she was complaining about a guy who was harassing her in a way or so. And then I later understood that he's a messed up guy. He's a fucked up guy.
Mm.
He's a sick person, and I understood his intentions because he was trying so bad. And again, I just met this girl, not literally face to face, hatta.
Hmm.
And I was ready to just go and beat the shit out of him.
Yeah. And
Like
that's what
it it's
every single guy should do. Okay, every single guy. If you know someone, okay, who 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 is an abuser, or is a rapist, or has sexually assaulted anyone, or even
don't
if
talk
you
to him, just
if
go beat the shit out of him.
even if you feel like he's just a threat, like he may do something like that, beat their fucking ass. Like talking never works with these kind of people. You have to give them something
What
to
they deserve.
remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
then you have to give them something to remember for every time that they feel that urge to do any disgusting act like that. They
They
know that they're
remember.
gonna get their ass beat.
Yeah, and you're especially, I feel like you're especially responsible to do that. You have a special responsibility to do that if you have sisters, because I
Like,
feel like
No, that's insane.
it's a disservice to them if you don't do that shit. If you even if you just turn a blind eye to it, it's a massive fucking disservice. Because like just the thought that someone would even consider touching one of my sisters makes me want to fucking slaughter someone.
yeah,
Makes me want to slam their head against the fucking wall.
yeah, I get what you mean.
And
So,
there's
And
a saying.
mhm.
Oh, sorry,
No, no,
continue.
no, go,
I'm
go,
sorry.
go.
Um, it's a saying that I usually that's how I was raised. Okay, and that's how other people should be raised. اللي هو I'm gonna say it in Arabic then translate it. ما تقبلوش على بنات بيتك، ما تقبلوش على بنات الناس.
Yeah,
Which means if any act of any sort that you don't accept on the women of your household, you shouldn't accept on the women of any other household, or any other woman.
yeah. Hmm.
تمام, which includes uh everything, including sexual assault. Like if one of my friends was sexually abused or sexually assaulted, and I got to know about that, I'm gonna treat her the same way I treat the situation with my sister,
Hmm.
mm,
because that's how we're supposed to treat other women. That's with the same level of respect, with the same level of protectiveness.
Hmm.
Because if we don't, then it's yeah. I just yeah.
Yeah, I
but
get
at the
you.
same time, we shouldn't turn a blind eye to the fact that many young boys are also sexually
Yeah, yeah,
assaulted.
yeah. Of course.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's such a I don't know how to, not a controversial topic, but people choose not to talk about sexual assault when it comes to boys,
Because
or
man
or
up.
or
I
yeah,
fucking
Yeah.
hate that. I
toxic
hate that phrase
masculinity.
so much. Man up. It's so. Ugh. Anyway, I don't want to get into that.
But as well,
Discussion.
for the young boys or the young men that were sexually assaulted or sexually abused, we love you. Just
And
point
it
the
doesn't
finger.
make you any less of a man.
Yeah, any
Doesn't make
less
you
of a man.
any less of a man.
Yeah.
And if anyone says anything regarding that topic, and just wants to put you down,
Just let
and
me
and
know,
goes
bro.
through that,
Just let me
yeah,
know.
exactly, goes through that toxic masculinity route, just talk him in the face, because talking with such people just doesn't
There's no point
like
arguing with a brick wall.
there's no point. And literally, people right now on Twitter, on like a lot of topics, including the Black Lives Matter movement, and including sexual assault. People are literally arguing with brick walls.
Hmm.
Don't waste your time. These people are so
Mm.
ignorant to the point where they're not listening. They're just waiting for you to finish your line so they can say another. They're not trying to understand. They're
Hmm.
just there to argue, waste your time. They're literally so ignorant. to the point where it's just gonna end up with you angry as shit because you wasted your time on dumbass people.
Mhm.
Just if you see someone like that who isn't willing to be educated, who isn't willing to improve upon his morals and ideas and understanding, just uh, bye bye, block, anything. It doesn't matter. Just
Yeah,
don't waste your time. You can
and
do.
that's yeah, and
Go
that's the
ahead. Go
thing
ahead.
about the modern age is that everyone has a platform to be heard, and everyone has a platform to put out their opinion, but nobody really knows how to have an argument. Nobody knows that sometimes their points will be challenged and their opinions may be changed as a result. And many people aren't willing to accept that. Like the as you said, they'll just be like, "Oh no, fuck you, I'm right, block."
Mhm.
And that's something I feel like is a big issue with like our society as a whole. That people kind of just they don't argue to for constructive reasons. They argue to find out which opinion is right. And in the end, both people are simply just more radical about their own wrong opinions.
I get you.
And
Not that
it
the
just
opinion
ends up
is
being
wrong.
personal. It just
Exactly.
ends up being personal. Like people start attacking other people's friends, features, whatever. Like it just it's no
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, people, and that's something that I think should be taught in schools. It should be part of the education system, but it's just how to accept, and something that should be taught from a young age that sometimes you will be wrong and you need to accept that. And you need to, but it shouldn't be a defeat. It should be like an educational moment.
Mhm.
People should learn how to have more constructive conversations rather than just an argument and two people shouting at walls.
I get you.
You Because a lot of times, like you'll be in an argument and they'll say something, you're like, oh shit, they're right, but I'm so deep in, I can't give in.
Mhm.
You don't want to lose the argument.
That's when pride comes in. Like
Exactly.
people, yeah,
And and I myself am guilty of this. I'm not like like you've
yeah,
probably you two as well have probably gotten into an argument with
yeah.
someone and you've looking back you're like shit, they were making good points, but I chose to ignore it because of pride and I chose that my point was more right. Or in hindsight, maybe we could have compromised if we had simply rather than having a shouting match, simply just talked like human beings and just had a normal discussion. We could have had a good compromise and found a middle ground.
I
But
believe these. Oh, continue. I'm very sorry.
no, I was just saying good, but in reality, most people don't have that skill.
Yeah, yeah. But I really believe that people like when it comes to arguments, like such, people should instead of taking it publicly, if they just want to educate someone or tell someone they're wrong, they shouldn't do it publicly because I believe now people are get offended or feel that the other person is being aggressive when he points out uh, a, a flaw or something wrong that he said publicly. So I believe like most of these arguments should be uh, in like more private, like DM someone and tell them, oh, this and that, so he isn't embarrassed, or it's it's gonna be more productive, you know.
Mhm.
Anyways, yeah,
Yeah.
that's about it.
Yeah, so I think that marks an end to this episode of the Candid podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I hope you guys enjoyed the great guest we had on today. Thank you, Matthew, for being on.
Thank you,
Thank
Matthew.
you for having me. It was a enjoyable experience. I like the constructive conversation that we had.
Yeah, and I think we brought up a lot of vital points and arguments that I think needed to be spoken about a bit more.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna leave a couple links in the description to help donate, not just to the Black Lives Matter movement, but to help donate for the Palestinian Fund, and I'll make sure I'll drop those in the description. So please go check those out if you'd like to donate to help out. And yeah, have a great day.